Welcome back to the Sooner Surge. As today we're here to give you a little defensive breakdown, a little recruiting information and update. Make sure you're part of the Sooner Surge YouTube channel. Click the subscribe button, turn on the notifications. We have Brody and Hunter here. Hunter spent some time yesterday with Oklahoma recruit trying to get Danny Okoye. Spent some time with him at his official visit there in Norman. We'll get to that in a minute as well. But let's start with the defensive stuff that, Hunter, I know you've heard multiple guys talk about and the effects that it's really having on the recruiting end of things.
Yeah, Danny Okoye will probably be the first person to tell you that last year's defense at OU was not good. He's said that a lot. He said it on KREF back in May after that unofficial visit that he had, that one-day visit with Coach Chavis. So Okoye has been big. He's been critical, and rightfully so. When you're a four-star, borderline five-star, should be a five-star defensive lineman in the country, you should be able to say those things about a defense if they're not good. And OU's defense has not been good in a long time. But with Brent Venables, it's going to be good. And so far, it already is. That was as perfect of a game you can get, really, in all expectations for a defense. I know there's been a lot of talks on the pass rush issues. Talking to the guys that it matters to the most, the recruits there, I'd never heard any sort of complaint coming from those guys on the pass rush. I actually heard the opposite, that they were impressed with the defensive line's performance. Brody, me and you were a little younger, so do you remember a time when corners were able to make a play because the quarterback threw it within 1.7 seconds, like what was happening yesterday? That hasn't happened in a long time. And when it did happen, Woody Washington made plays. Gentry Williams made plays. Billy Bowman made plays. The entire secondary made plays on those quick throws. Before it would be 13 seconds, however long it was. There was just no pass rush. So even though the stats didn't really show, there was one sack yesterday, Ethan Downs. The stat book does not show a strong defensive performance on the defensive line and linebackers and front seven. It was a strong performance. They were getting pressure. They were forcing JT Stroud to get rid of the ball early, quicker. He made some bad throws. The pressure got to him throughout the game. So that was one thing that's really stood out to me so far, is that this defense, it's only week one. It's only Arkansas State, but it's already improving. It's already turning the heads that need to be turned on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, with as far as recruiting goes, obviously, since Venables has taken over at the helm, the defensive side of the recruiting has picked up. That's not something that was surprising. That's what really Sooner fans, Sooner staff, administration, all of them expected. That was part of the reason in going after a guy like Brent Venables heading to the SEC, was that the defense would be able to recruit better. We know they've lost out on a couple of guys on some commits, but here you have Danny Okoye and Nigel Smith coming up, and some other ones that have a chance to really make this defensive line group pretty special. So, yeah, I know that the defensive side of it has picked up, and that's a big thing. We even heard Okoye on our video the first time we had him on, talked about, a little bit of the struggling defense that he had seen. But he also, when we asked him, why OU now, because you haven't really seemed to be, that interested in OU, his comment was the defense is going to be good, that they struggled, but he knew that was kind of an anomaly last year, that it wasn't going to be like that all the time. So Okoye, I'm excited about Okoye. I think his upside, I've said it, I'm not ashamed to say it, his upside may be higher, and the ceiling may be higher than any of these other guys that's coming in here. Super athletic freak and things like that. So
yeah, and you talk about like the defense. When you look at it, it was a great performance from the defense, and some of the guys that BV had brought in, like Deshaun McCullough, played 2 snaps. And Deshaun McCullough, in those 2 snaps, he made a good play on the first play he was in there. So he's a guy who's going to make even more plays. He didn't play yesterday. R. Mason Thomas didn't even play yesterday. That's another pass rush guy. But again, if the pass rush is good enough to impress guys like Danny Okoye, who's a 4-star, probably should be the number 1 player in the state of Oklahoma, where he isn't listed the number 1 player. If it impresses him, that's at the end of the day one of the things that needs to impress the most.
Yeah, we talked to Danny a while back. think it was right before the party at the Palace, who said he was still going to do at that point the game day visits, which this was the OU one, and just the atmosphere. Again, fans impressed him. I was very glad to hear that. I was a little worried, not going to lie. It was not the best game for a recruit to come to if you're looking for that atmosphere, because it was hot, 11 a.m. kick, not a great opponent, all those things. Some fans don't bring it, and they brought it. That's what Danny, his thoughts on it, and that's what matters, what he thinks about it. It doesn't matter what I think. It matters what Danny Okoye thinks about the atmosphere at the game. So there's game day visits. He has Texas coming up. He has Tennessee coming up, and then maybe a few more, depending on some scheduling things.
Yeah, and obviously, depending on who he goes and sees, who Texas' opponent is in Tennessee, I'm not sure that the crowd, it depends on what game he sees. But it was good to hear that the crowd that he liked the atmosphere there. What else, kind of as you visited with him, stood out on some things about Okoye, and how are you feeling about Danny Okoye coming to Norman?
Again, it's post visit. When you're talking to someone right after, it's hard to truly know, because things are going to be a little bit. They're at school. He's still on the visit. I'm sure he's home by now as we're recording this. But he stayed Saturday night, had stuff for Sunday morning, some things scheduled to wrap up the official. So nothing negative necessarily is going to be said, but it was just a whole lot of positives about how he can see himself in there. That, I asked him about the 87 players that played a snap yesterday, and he's like, that matters. Like, to get to play early, that means something. And he's like seeing the rotations in the defensive line room, all of that. Like, it matters to him. He wanted to see it on the field. He saw it yesterday with what Coach Todd Bates, Coach Miguel Chavis, what Coach Brent Venables have been able to do specifically on the defensive line. It's already noticeable for him. And then another guy I talked with was PWO commit Ace Hodges from Cassidy. And he talked about how he kind of took the risk to commit in the middle of the summer as a PWO. A lot of times the PWOs they'll get the PWO offer. They're going to evaluate everything. He had some D1 offers. More offers were going to start rolling in for him. And he was like, no, OU's where I want to be. I want to be PWO. He said, I've worked for everything so far, continue to work for everything going forward in college. Just really excited to be a Sooner come next year. Excited for like the soul mission, both of them. Soul mission, again, that stuff wins. Again, both of them. No one else is doing it. That's what they both said. Like, that's an OU thing that no one else is really doing it. Clemson has it, similar type of program, but just for no one else to be able to do it, that's what kind of stands out for a lot of these guys when they're looking at OU.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Ace Hodges. Virgin Kaiser is another one, another PWO commit. OU is doing a really good job, especially on the defensive line, getting PWOs that can bring depth and can compete for spots. But, Danny Okoye is going to be a very important get for Oklahoma. And I still think, they may lose Williams Nwaneri. They may lose Don McKinley, Joseph Jonah Jr. They might have lost him. I think this is going to be potentially the best defensive line class we've ever seen at Oklahoma, just because I think Danny Okoye, very underrated player. You have David Stone, Nigel Smith's committing on the 8th, and then, Jaden Jackson is also a very underrated player. And you talk about Ace Hodges and Virgin Kaiser. So there's guys that they're getting in this defensive line class that Oklahoma simply hasn't gotten in the past.
Right, and Okoye's one. He is in the backyard, and they've really made a push considering where they were at this time last year. Because this time last year, he was really not even on the radar as a Sooner. And now he's definitely on the radar. Miguel Chavis was there Friday night in the game in which Danny battling the shoulder injury and things like that. So I know the relationship, and yeah, Soul Mission is different than everywhere else. Where the OU is really one of the only programs that has something like that, and of course, it hasn't been able to. That's not a reason that they've gotten. They did not land Don McKinley, so we know that. But it is something that's offered that a lot of places obviously do not offer. I am counting on the relationship with Miguel Chavis and others on staff to really pull through here with Okoye. And like I said earlier, this is one. I think this is a massive opportunity and get that they could get. And we don't have a date as far as commitment date for Okoye, correct?
Speculation. November or October?
Yeah, from the sounds of it, I'm going to lean more mid-October. Again, nothing's confirmed. That's just my opinion.
After he gets his game day visits wrapped up.
Yeah, so there's still scheduling issues. There's OU this past weekend, November 2nd. You have Texas, Wyoming at Texas on September 16th, which that one's really turned into a much bigger of a game as, Wyoming upset Texas Tech. Maybe that's a sneaky good opponent. Maybe they can pull off that upset for OU's sake. It's a lot harder to have a great game day visit when the team loses. And then Tennessee, they play South Carolina. I think it was September 30th, I believe. So of the three, by far, that's the biggest matchup. South Carolina, they played primetime last night, in primetime against North Carolina. They got the loss, but that's a program that last year kind of had the same start. They lost some games that people thought they might win, they upset a lot of teams. Last year, they beat Tennessee by, I don't know how much it was. I think it was over 30 last year. Like Spencer Rattler had the game of his life. So the game day stuff matters. Jerm mentioned Miguel Chavis' relationship. That matters. When coaches show up to a game to watch you play, that matters.
The night before the first game of the season, too.
Danny Okoye is paying attention to that. Miguel Chavis was there before an 11 a.m. kick. That's a lot. Tulsa's an hour. I think that I believe they were playing at Webster, either Webster or Metro.
It's Webster.
So at Webster. So from Tulsa, that's about almost a 2-hour drive, pretty close to it for Coach Chavis to make before an 11 a.m. kick, and he's doing it. That means something to these recruits that to see someone show up to watch them play and to really just support them.
And when you talk about, we've used this phrase on here oftentimes with a lot of recruits, especially guys, when you use the phrase in your backyard, that's why you should have a definite advantage with guys in your backyard, because you're able to take the visits a little more maybe. So you're able to build a relationship maybe a little quicker. Hey, Hunter, before we get off here, I want to ask you about everyone knows, I think, that follows Noah and follows Danny Okoye, what OU would be getting in a guy on the field. Maybe just what's one thing that stood out to you about Danny Okoye, the person, here before we get off here?
Really just he's a sincere guy. The family atmosphere stuff at OU matters. Like he's looking for more than just football. Relationships with them, that matters. And then just the on the field stuff. I joked with him. I'm like, are you going to go to a Coles kicking camp? Because, I've watched you punt. You punted two 50-yarders in week 0. One was down inside the 10. Like, he could be a 5-star punter. Like, obviously, he's not going to be that. He's 6'5", 240, pretty much all muscle. That's the makings of an elite defensive end. So, just really the off the field stuff of it's more than football to him. The kind of stuff of turning him into a man, life after football. He wants his degree, all of that stuff. So really impressed with Danny Okoye. Talking to him now, for me, this was the third time talking with him. Hoping to talk with him again after these visits that are coming up. Another thing is, he might be back at OU. Who knows? It won't be public, though. It will be maybe we'll see it on Twitter. Danny Okoye popped out to a game. That's one advantage OU has.
Yeah.
Like you said, they're 2 hours away from him. He can make that drive pretty easily, a lot cheaper than trying to show up at a Texas game or at a Tennessee game. OU's a lot closer. So who knows if that happens? Again, it's all going to depend on scheduling. If he's able to make game day visits to the other 3 teams in his top 6. He's got Colorado. That's another relatively close one. And I mean, they pulled off that upset yesterday.
Yeah,
you watched it.
You're
aware of that. What's
yeah.
going on with them? Then you got Bama, you got LSU. Those are 2 SEC powerhouses that, with a 4 or 5 star, 4-star defensive lineman, they're gonna make pushes. So I'm sure those schools are really trying their hardest to get him in at least one more time for a game day, because he told us this months ago. Game days are going to be a large part of the decision. Seeing all the game day atmosphere, traditions, all that. And OU really did well on that. I don't think he's been to, I could be wrong. I don't believe from the sounds of it, he's been to an OU game before. So to really just see the tradition stuff, wall, everything that the fans do throughout the game, it means a lot to him to be able to see that firsthand.
Yeah, and I know Sooner fans would be very excited to have bookended on the lines Atabare and Okoye for a few years, along with some other guys they've already gotten on that defensive line. Defensive line group can still be special. And it was disappointing to not get the commit from Don McKinley, but there's still a lot of commits coming up. Appreciate the inside info there, Hunter, and sharing with us about the visit with Okoye. And defense, like you said, guys, looking strong. They'll be tested next week. SMU brings in an offense that can put up some points. So we'll get after that this next week. Make sure you are subscribed to the Sooner Surge, as we're going to have many videos coming at you this week. Till next time, guys. Boomer.